It takes only one message to remind you how small you still are in your family's eyes. My name's Ethan Walker, 34, founder of Narrator Systems, a cybersecurity company I built from nothing but long nights, burnt coffee, and heartbreak. But this story isn't about business. It's about Thanksgiving, the one that showed me who truly belonged at my table. It started with a text. It was early November. Gray skies over Chicago. My office still smelling faintly of new leather and old ambition. My phone buzzed with a message from my dad. "Hey, Ethan, we're keeping Thanksgiving small this year. Just your sister's family and us. You understand, right, Dad?" I stared at it, thumb hovering over the keyboard. No explanation, no warmth. Just dismissal disguised as logistics. I typed back, "Sure, have a great one." Then I set the phone down, my hands trembling. That one line cut deeper than they could ever know. Because for 30 years I'd been the family disappointment. The dreamer who didn't follow the rules. The son who didn't go to law school like my sister. The one who kept chasing ideas. Growing up, Lena, my sister, was the star. Straight A student, debate champion, everyone's favorite. When I won the regional science fair in 8th grade, my dad patted my head and said, "That's great, buddy. But have you seen Lena's new debate trophy?" Mom smiled, camera pointed at her. Not me. That was my childhood, quiet victories, louder silences. When I got into MIT, I thought, this is it. They'll finally see me. But Dad said, "That's far. You sure you can handle that alone?" Mom added, "Why not stay closer to home like your sister did?" Safer, I went anyway. And that was the last time they ever visited me. MIT was lonely, but it was freedom. I buried myself in code and caffeine, building small projects that no one cared about. Except me. While other students partied, I was debugging until sunrise. I called home sometimes just to hear a familiar voice, but most of the time no one picked up. When I launched my first startup at 25, it failed within a year. I lost everything: money, apartment, confidence. I called my dad that night. "I just need a bit of help getting back up," I said. He sighed. "Ethan, you need to grow up. These tech dreams are fine for kids, not adults." Lena just opened her second law office. That sentence, "Lena just opened her second law office," was the soundtrack of my 20s, so I learned to stop asking. Years later, when my second company, Narrator, started to take off, I told no one. Not my parents. Not Lena. I just worked. Harder than ever. 12-hour days turned into 20. Some nights I slept in the office using my jacket as a pillow. I built a system that would eventually protect millions of users' data. But at the time, it was just me, a dying laptop, and a dream nobody believed in. Then one morning, I woke up to an email from a government agency. They wanted to test Narrator for national security. Within a year, the platform exploded. By 32, I was a millionaire. By 33, a multimillionaire. Still, I said nothing to my family. Why? Because I didn't need their applause anymore. Or so I thought. But that text, "Just your sister's family and us," reminded me that even after everything I'd built, I was still the invisible son. That night, I walked through my penthouse apartment, city lights spilling across the floor, and realized something. I'd spent my whole life building walls. Maybe it was time to build a table instead. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started typing invitations. Not to my parents, not to Lena, but to everyone they'd forgotten. My Uncle Ben, who loaned me $500 in college when I couldn't afford rent. My old professor, Dr. Patel, who once said, "You'll change the world if you don't quit." My high school friend Jasmine, who brought me soup when my startup crashed. 40 names. 40 people who had seen me, believed in me, or stood beside me when nobody else did. That night, under the hum of the city, I decided to create my own Thanksgiving, a real one. A table filled not with judgment, but with belonging. And that decision would change everything. Sometimes you don't build success for applause. You build it to have a place to belong. The morning after that text, I woke up with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. No anger, no revenge, just a quiet decision. I was done waiting for their invitation. I opened my calendar, scrolled to the last Thursday of November, and blocked it with 2 words in bold: my Thanksgiving. Outside my apartment window, The Chicago skyline glowed pale and gold under a crisp sunrise. Down below, the city was waking up. People in coats hurrying for coffee, buses sighing at red lights, pigeons scattering like thoughts. And there I was, a man with more money than I'd ever imagined, yet still chasing something I couldn't buy. Belonging. By noon, I called my assistant, Maya. "Can you clear my schedule for next week?" I said. She hesitated. "All of it? You've got investor calls, interviews, all of it," I cut in. "I need to go somewhere quiet. Somewhere with sky," she knew better than to ask. Within hours, she emailed a list of private estates and retreats. One caught my eye, a ranch in Montana, 120 acres surrounded by pine forests and snow-kissed hills. I stared at the pictures. Warm wooden beams, a fireplace taller than me, and a dining hall that could seat 50. I didn't hesitate. "Book it," I said. That night, I sat on the floor with a notepad and started writing names. Not titles, not ranks, just people. Uncle Ben, the mechanic who fixed my car for free when I was broke. Dr. Patel, my old MIT professor who told me failure is just data with emotion. Jasmine, my college friend who once said, "You're not crazy, Ethan. You're just early." Even Mr. Hayes, my high school teacher who taught me how to speak up. Even when my voice shook, every name I wrote carried a story. A moment of kindness, a time someone chose to see me when my own family didn't. By midnight, I had a list of 42 names. People my parents would have called irrelevant. To me, they were everything. 2 weeks later, I flew to Montana. When I stepped off the small charter plane, the air was pure, sharp with pine and snow. The ranch stood on a hill like something out of a painting. Wide porches, golden light spilling from the windows, and silence that felt sacred. The manager, a cheerful woman named Claire, handed me a key. "Welcome home," she said. Home. That word hit harder than I expected. Inside, the lodge smelled of cedar and cinnamon. The wooden floors creaked under my boots as I walked through, a great room with a stone fireplace. Long dining tables and glass windows framing mountains that stretched into forever. For the first time in years, I felt small, but in a good way. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning, not for show, but for meaning. I hired a local chef, Marco, to design a menu that felt like warmth. Slow-roasted turkey, wild mushroom soup, fresh bread, honey pie. I ordered handwritten invitations sealed with gold wax, each one saying, "This Thanksgiving, I'm hosting a dinner for the people who believed in me when I had nothing to give back. Come share this table. You belong here." When I dropped them in the post office, the clerk looked up and smiled. "Big family?" she asked. I smiled back. "Yeah," I said softly. "Bigger than they think?" That night I video called Jasmine. "You're really doing this?" she asked, laughing. "I am," I said. "I'm tired of waiting for permission to feel seen." She grinned. "I'll bring wine." Expensive wine. Then she paused, her tone softening. "You sure you're ready to face what this means? Your family might see the photos." "I hope they do," I said quietly. "Maybe they'll finally understand what they lost." A week later, RSVPs began flooding in. Almost everyone said yes. Some wrote back with messages that broke me a little inside. "Ethan, I haven't had a real Thanksgiving in years. Can I bring my kids? They've never seen snow. You don't know what this means to me." Each response reminded me sometimes family isn't blood. It's recognition. The day before Thanksgiving, the ranch was alive. Trucks arrived with fresh produce. The chef unpacked spices. Workers set long tables under glowing lanterns. I walked through the great hall, running my fingers along the smooth oak surface, picturing faces around it. Laughter, stories, warmth. The kind of table I'd never been invited to. That night, snow began to fall, slow, silent flakes drifting against the windows. I stood on the porch looking at the sky, breath fogging in the cold. In the distance, I could almost hear my father's voice from years ago. "Dreams are nice, Ethan, but they don't pay the bills." He was wrong. Dreams do pay the bills. But more than that, they build homes. Homes like this. Tomorrow, my real Thanksgiving would begin. Not out of revenge, but out of peace, and deep down I knew it would be the day everything changed. Sometimes the people who find you in your lowest moments are the ones you were meant to call family all along. Thanksgiving morning in Montana looked like something out of a dream. The sky was pale gold, snow glittered on the pine trees, and smoke curled softly from the ranch's chimneys. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon, butter, and slow-roasted turkey, warmth in every breath. I woke up before sunrise, not because I had to, but because I couldn't sleep. Today wasn't just a dinner, it was a declaration, a quiet, gentle rebellion against all the years I'd spent being unseen. I slipped on a dark wool coat and stepped onto the porch. The cold air bit my face, but the silence felt good, clean. In the distance, the hills stretched endlessly, white, wide, and forgiving. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I was waiting for my people. By 10 a.m., the driveway came alive. A black SUV pulled up first. Uncle Ben climbed out, grinning ear to ear, his beard flecked with snow. "Kid, look at this place," he said, throwing his arms wide. "You finally made it big, huh?" I laughed, hugging him tight. "You helped me get here, remember?" He chuckled. "All I did was fix your car." "You did the rest," I smiled. "That's what you think." Next came Dr. Patel, my old professor. He still wore the same tweed jacket, his hair now mostly gray. "Ethan Walker," he said with a smile that reached his eyes. "I told you your ideas would take off." I bowed slightly, joking. "You were right, as always." Behind him, Jasmine arrived, bundled in a red coat, carrying 2 bottles of wine and her signature grin. "I brought backup," she said, holding the bottles like trophies. I laughed. "Good. We might need it." More cars arrived, one after another, friends, mentors, even 2 former interns from my early startup days. By noon, the ranch was buzzing with voices, laughter, and the sound of children running through the snow. Inside, Chef Marco moved like an artist. Pots clanged softly, bread baked golden in the oven, and the aroma of herbs filled every corner of the room. The long oak table was set, silverware shining, candles flickering, fresh pine branches laid down the center like a trail of light. I looked at it all and felt my chest tighten. This was the kind of Thanksgiving I used to imagine as a kid. A place where people looked at each other and really saw. "Ethan," Jasmine said, nudging me gently. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking. For years I wanted my parents to see me. Now I realize. Maybe I was meant to build something new instead." She smiled softly. "Then you did exactly that." At 2 p.m., everyone gathered in the great hall. The snow outside was falling thicker now, soft flakes dancing past the windows. Uncle Ben helped light the fire, and the room glowed orange and gold. The sound of laughter filled every space, the kind that warms you from the inside out. I stood at the head of the table, heart pounding. "Before we eat," I said, "I just want to say something." The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to me. "I spent a long time chasing the kind of family that never looked back at me," I began. "I thought success would finally make me enough. But the truth is, I already was. I just didn't have the right people around me." I paused, my throat tight. "You all were there when I had nothing. No money, no plan, no confidence. You showed up when my own blood didn't. So today, this table is yours. You're the reason it exists." A hush fell over the room, broken only by the crackle of fire. Uncle Ben raised his glass first. "To Ethan, the kid who turned rejection into an empire." Laughter rippled, glasses clinked. Then Dr. Patel added, "And to the man who remembered gratitude is the foundation of success." The moment felt holy, not religious, but real. Every smile, every tear glimmered like light through glass. I looked around the room, at people talking, eating, laughing, and realized something profound. This was my family. Not by name, not by blood, but by choice. And that kind of family, the kind you build through kindness, loyalty, and love, doesn't fade. Later, as evening fell, we gathered by the fireplace. Snow was falling thick now, the world outside quiet and white. Jasmine leaned back on the rug, sipping her wine. "You know," she said softly, "they'll see the pictures eventually." I smirked. "Let them," she laughed. "You sound ready." I nodded. "Maybe I am. Maybe for once. I don't care." And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The fire crackled. Someone began to hum a tune. I leaned back in my chair, letting the warmth seep in, and whispered under my breath, "This is what home feels like." You can move far away from your past, but sometimes it still finds you through a single photo. The next morning, sunlight spilled gently through the curtains, touching the empty plates and half-burned candles on the oak table. The house smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon, and laughter that still lingered in the walls. Everyone had left except Jasmine. She was curled up on the couch, sipping coffee, watching the snow outside. I stood near the window, scrolling through my phone. Messages, notifications, and photos people had posted from the night before. The first one hit me like a quiet storm. A post from Jasmine, "The best Thanksgiving ever," surrounded by real family. There were dozens of comments, hearts, cheers, people writing things like, "This is what love looks like." But one comment stopped me cold. My sister. "So, you really went through with it?" I froze. The air seemed to tighten around me. An hour later, my phone rang. Mom. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, her name glowing like a wound I wasn't ready to touch. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, "Ethan." Her voice was calm, too calm. "Hi, Mom." "I saw the pictures," she said flatly. "Looked extravagant." I exhaled slowly. It wasn't about extravagance. It was about people who care. A pause. Then quietly, she said, "We didn't mean to hurt you." I almost laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. "Didn't mean to?" "You uninvited me from Thanksgiving, Mom." "You know how your father is," she replied softly. "No, Mom," I said. "I know how you are when he decides something." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of years of words we never said. She finally spoke. "Your father didn't want things to be awkward." "Awkward," I said, "because I built something without your approval? Because I stopped begging to be part of the table?" Her voice cracked just slightly. "You don't understand, Ethan." I closed my eyes. "No, Mom, I understand perfectly. I just stopped playing the role you gave me." She took a shaky breath. "Your sister cried last night. She said it felt wrong without you." My voice softened. "Then maybe you should have listened to her." There was another pause, longer this time. "Your father wants to talk," she whispered. I almost said no, but something inside me said yes. A new voice came on the line, deep, stern, familiar. "Ethan." "Dad, I hear you hosted your own Thanksgiving," he said. "Quite the show." I clenched my jaw. "It wasn't a show. It was family," he chuckled bitterly. "Family. Half of those people aren't even related to you." I shot back quietly. "That's the point." Another silence, heavy, sharp. "You embarrassed us," he said finally. I felt something inside me break, but it wasn't sadness this time. It was strength. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "you erased me long before I embarrassed you." He said nothing. I continued. "All those years I tried to make you proud. Every project, every success. I thought maybe this time you'd look at me and say, 'That's my son.' But you never did. You only looked when I failed." There was a faint sound, like a sigh on the other end. "Ethan," he began. But I stopped him gently. "No, Dad, don't explain. Don't justify. Just listen. I'm done chasing your table. I've built my own. And everyone there last night reminded me I was never the problem." Then I ended the call. Not out of anger. Out of peace. The room felt silent again, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore. Jasmine looked at me from across the couch. "Was that them?" I nodded. "Yeah? What did they say?" I smiled faintly. Everything I expected. And nothing I needed. She set down her cup, walked over, and hugged me. No words, just quiet understanding. That evening, as the sky turned orange behind the snowy hills, I stood outside with my hands in my coat pockets. The cold bit my skin, but I didn't feel small anymore. The wind whispered through the pines, soft like forgiveness. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just free. Sometimes closure doesn't come from an apology. It comes from realizing you don't need one. You can forgive someone without reopening the door, but sometimes destiny knocks for a reason. 3 weeks passed since that Thanksgiving. The snow in Montana had grown deeper, blanketing the ranch in soft silence. The guests had all returned to their cities and lives. but their laughter still lingered in the rooms, like music that refused to fade. I spent most mornings working near the fireplace, sketching designs for my next restaurant, a project that had suddenly found new meaning. For once, I wasn't building for prestige. I was building for peace. Jasmine had flown back to New York, but she still called every night. Her voice was my favorite kind of noise, honest, familiar, safe, and just when life had started to find rhythm again, it happened. It was a Saturday evening. The sun was setting, painting the snow in gold. I heard a faint knock on the door. Not urgent, just hesitant. I opened it, and there he was. My father, standing on my porch, gray coat dusted with snow, holding his hat like a man unsure whether he's welcome. For a second, my breath caught. The man who had shaped my entire life and nearly broken it was standing right in front of me. "Dad," I said quietly. He nodded once. "Ethan." The silence between us felt like another person. Finally, I stepped aside. "Come in." He looked around the house as he entered. Every detail, the paintings, the smell of wood, the open shelves full of cookbooks, told the story of the son he'd never really known. "You've done well for yourself," he said softly. "Yeah," I replied. It took a while. He didn't answer, just stared at the fire. For a long moment, all we heard was the crackle of wood. Then he said something I never expected. "I saw the video." I turned to him. "What video?" He pulled out his phone and played a clip, one Jasmine had posted from Thanksgiving night. "The toast," my voice echoing across the screen. "I stopped chasing the family that wouldn't look back, and built one that did." He paused the video. "You meant that?" I looked at him, not as a son begging to be understood, but as a man who finally stood on level ground. "Yes," I said. Every word. He nodded slowly. "I know I made things hard for you." "Hard?" I whispered. "Dad, you cut me out of our family. You didn't even call me that night." His eyes glistened, a sight I'd never seen before. "I didn't know how," he said quietly. "I thought you didn't want to hear from me." I almost laughed, but I didn't, because I understood. Pride can silence even love. We sat for a while without speaking. Then he said, "You remember the first restaurant you ever built in town? The one that failed?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah, the one you called a waste of money." He winced a little. I was wrong. I turned to him. "About the restaurant?" He shook his head. "About you." My chest tightened. He continued, "I thought being tough on you would make you strong, but all it did was push you away. And when I saw you surrounded by those people who looked at you with pride, I realized they saw something I never bothered to." For a second, I couldn't speak. It was strange. After all the years of silence, he wasn't the same man who shut the door on me. He looked older, softer, human. He reached into his coat and pulled something out, a photo. It was me at 16, standing in front of our old house with my first dish, a messy plate of pasta. "You burned it," he said with a small smile. "Yeah," I laughed. "Almost set the kitchen on fire." He nodded. "Your mother kept this. She looks at it every Thanksgiving." I swallowed hard. "She does?" He nodded. "She wanted to come, but she wasn't sure you'd want that." I took a deep breath. I didn't know what I wanted. Until now. The firelight flickered across his face. For the first time, I saw regret. Not hidden behind pride, but naked and real. He stood up slowly. I should go. But before he turned, I said quietly, "Dad." He stopped. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" He froze, just like I had years ago when waiting for an invitation that never came. His eyes softened. "You'd want that?" I smiled faintly. "It's just soup and bread. Nothing fancy." He nodded, voice trembling. "That sounds perfect." We ate in silence, but not the painful kind. It was quiet, comfortable. He told me stories from his youth. I told him about the team, the restaurants, and the people who'd become my family. At one point, he looked around the table and said, "This place feels like peace." I nodded. That's all I ever wanted. When he left that night, he stopped at the door. "Ethan," he said softly, "next year, maybe we can all be at the same table again." I didn't promise. I just said, "We'll see." And for the first time, that was enough. As I watched his car fade into the snowy distance, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means you're done carrying the weight. Some doors, when reopened gently, don't bring pain. They bring peace. Time doesn't heal everything, but it teaches you what truly matters. A year later, Thanksgiving came again. Same date, same snow, but a different kind of silence. Not the lonely one, the peaceful kind. The Montana ranch looked alive again, golden light pouring through the windows, laughter echoing across the yard, and the smell of roasted bread filling the air. I stood outside for a moment, watching the smoke rise from the chimney, and smiled. This time, I wasn't waiting for anyone's call. I wasn't wondering who would remember me, because everyone who mattered was already here. Inside, the long oak table was set again. Candles, plates, pine branches, the same as before. But one thing was new. At the far end of the table sat my father. Next to him, my mother. They'd arrived earlier that afternoon. Not uninvited, not awkward, just quiet. We hugged, exchanged small smiles, and somehow the air didn't feel heavy anymore. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was grace. Maybe it was just love finding its way home. Jasmine walked in with a tray of pies. She winked at me. "Ready for round 2, Chef?" I laughed. "Always." She placed the pies down, leaned close and whispered, "You did it. Ethan, you built the bridge." I looked around the room, Uncle Ben cracking jokes, Dr. Patel telling a story to the kids, my mom helping set the napkins straight, and for the first time in my life it didn't feel like two worlds colliding. It felt like one table, whole, imperfect, real. Dinner began with laughter, clinking glasses, passing dishes, small talk about the weather, the snow, the food. But somewhere in the middle of it all, my father stood up. His voice trembled slightly. I don't usually say much," he began, looking at everyone. "But I owe my son a few words." The room grew still. He looked at me, eyes glistening in the candlelight. "Ethan, last year, I watched that video again. Your words, they stayed with me. I realized I'd spent years trying to teach you strength. But you were already stronger than I ever was." He paused, swallowing hard. "I just want you to know, I'm proud of you. Truly proud." My throat tightened. The kind of emotion you can't hide, even if you try. I stood up slowly and walked to him. "Thanks, Dad," I said softly. "That means more than you know." He nodded once, then pulled me into a hug. Firm, quiet, full of unspoken apologies. And in that moment, all the years of distance faded, not erased, just softened, like snow melting under sunlight. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood outside again. The ranch was silent. The stars burned bright above the snow. I could still hear the echoes of laughter inside, the sound of something whole again. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, I didn't just build a restaurant. I built a home that had room for everyone, those who stood by me when I had nothing and even those who once turned away, because love isn't about being chosen first. It's about choosing anyway. As the wind moved softly through the pines, I thought of the boy I used to be, standing alone outside his family's house, wondering why he wasn't enough. I smiled gently and said, "You made it. They cut me out of Thanksgiving once. But life found a way to seat me at a better table, one built from love, forgiveness, and peace. And this time I wasn't just invited. I belonged.